There are all kinds of critics of the Bible, people that will levy all sorts of charges against the Bible. And some of those critics that will say those things about the Bible will make a big deal of contradictions, apparent contradictions that they find in the Bible. The reason they think this is such a big deal is because one of the claims of Christianity is that the Bible is true, that it is without error, that it cannot lie, and that it produces a singular message. And so if there is an apparent contradiction, well, that seems to be a problem for Christianity. So critics will often beat that drum of these apparent contradictions. Well, there are some common mistakes that critics make when assuming that there are contradictions in Scripture. And we're going to, for the next few weeks, walk through some of those mistakes that critics make. So here's the first one today. Some critics assume that just because something is not explained in Scripture means that it's unexplainable. Whether it's a narrative account or some other part of Scripture, they'll say that if there is an apparent contradiction and it can't be explained by us, by 21st century readers, well, then it must be unexplainable, which would render the text nonsensical. It would perhaps go towards the credibility of the biblical text. Yeah, this assumption that critics make, that the unexplainable, the unexplained is unexplainable, it makes a few mistakes. It first of all is not consistent with what we as humans normally accept as truth. If we were looking in the realm of science and we found something that could not be explained, scientists don't assume right away that it could never be explained. Scientists assume that we have not found a way to explain it yet, but through perhaps more research and perhaps more study in this particular area, we'll come to an answer. Well, shouldn't we approach Scripture with the same integrity? Shouldn't we give Scripture the benefit of the doubt in that way too? That just because we can't explain something does not mean that it will never be explained. Perhaps also there is a simple explanation, but it's not one that a 21st century reader is going to be able to grasp. If you were a witness, if you were an eyewitness there, witnessing everything that went on, perhaps this apparent contradiction would prove itself to be just that, an apparent contradiction, but not an actual contradiction. And finally, this last point against this common mistake that critics make is one that a Christian can take as comfort for themselves. That if something seems to be a contradiction in Scripture, if something seems to be unexplainable in Scripture to us or to even the most learned scholars out there, it is not unexplainable to God. God can explain all of that because God is so much higher than we are. He is so much smarter than we are. And we are so thankful for that. We want a God that's smarter than us. We want a God that's higher than us. We want a God whose ways go way above our ways. And so if it's not explainable to us, it certainly is explainable to God. And the Christian takes great, great comfort in that. Isaiah 55 says just this: "Certainly my plans are not your plans, and your ways are not my ways, declares the Lord. Just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my plans higher than your plans." This is God's word.